Our first speaker is a friend of mine, a colleague of mine. I'm on an international board called Eating City, where we bring young people from all over the world to an organic farm outside of Paris every summer for a summer campus to have speakers and conversations about what can they do as a young generation to change the food systems for whatever they do in whatever capacity they're in. And it's an amazing experience every year. These young people are just incredible. We stay in contact with them. Pepe is the president of that organization at this time. But he's also an amazing professor from a college within the University of Turin. And I've seen his presentation. Of course, he makes it special for each group he talks to. And his bio is in your agenda, so you can read the specifics of his bio. But the reason I asked him to come, and I thank him for the travels that he made to come to the United States, is because every time I hear Pepe speak, his message is so powerful to me about what am I going to do to change this? What am I going to do to play a role in my personal life as well as my professional life? It's one of the reasons I took on the Alliance as the executive director, and I was willing to come on board and have the honor to serve this organization, because I just think we can make a difference. And that's what today is all about. And I hope you enjoy him as much as I do. Every time I hear him, I learn something new. Absolutely amazing, the power of his words. So I do hope you enjoy it. He's going to spend the time with us at the conference. So please welcome Pepe, my dear friend.
Whenever Kate Wilson lies about me, I'm kind of, it makes me shy, but also very proud of something and someone which is not myself, or who's not myself. So we'll talk about 3 bulls today, okay? And you will understand why 3 bulls in the course of this talk. 3 bulls. We have this metal green, iron green bull. This is from Turin, the little city by American standards in northern Italy at the border with France, where I live. But I'm a southerner myself. I'm from Sicily. And with these small bulls, Tourette in the dialect, in the Piedmontese dialect, we offer water to everybody, whether he or she is a taxpayer or not, okay? You come to Turin, you get to Piazza San Carlo, believe me, a beautiful piazza, and you get water for free if you are thirsty. And this little bull is the beginning of civilization, okay? In all civilizations, 3 things are offered to whoever is a guest, okay? It is water, it is food, and shelter, okay? These 3 big principles are sported by all religions. So we still have that. We still offer water, while some of your cities do offer water, and the whole of the US, to our wonder in Europe, offers free meals to their kids, okay? This is something that, believe me, overwhelms us with awe. You see, the homeland of capitalism, but also the newest civilization in the world. This is another bull. You know that better than I do. It is in southern Manhattan, South Manhattan, and it is the bull of speculation. And that is you, and even me today, the San Antonio Bulls. And all this is, the San Antonio Bulls are about a needed paradigm shift. One of the things that I understood about American hegemony in the last 80 to 100 years is the power of culture and of a cultural message. The narrative of America as a free country a country of opportunities. Opportunities are also about the ability a nation has to be flexible and change. And this is something, that worries Europeans. We do elections and then we are worried if an election does make a change. Oh, come on, we don't want that. And so we are always kind of, again, in awe when Americans do it. They do change, and everybody gets worried, as you can see. The world is worried at the moment. So this needed paradigm shift is something that you have made. You made some years ago here. You are the heroes of this big shift. In Europe, we don't have that. We do not have free meals in primary schools. And so we look at you for that. And you see, while in London, I lived in London for some 10 years, a life ago, we say no such a thing as a free lunch. What you say with those free meals is no civilization without free meals and without free lunches. Of course, it is, 1, 2% of the food consumed by a nation in a day, but it is the most important 1 to 2%. It is the forming, 1 to 2%. It is our kids sharing not only food, nutritious food, clean food, but also they are sharing something which is community, being together, irrespective of social provenance, irrespective of difficulties. I was talking to Rick Garcia this morning, and he told me, look, for some families, this is the meal the kids get. And this is even truer in the last years. So we do need a paradigm shift, and you are making it. So don't be worried. I, as a European old boy, I can be worried, but you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be worried or be the heroes of this paradigm shift. What is a paradigm? You know better than I do, but anyway, in science and academia, it is a distinct set of theories, research methods, and standards for what constitutes legitimate contributions to a field. So a paradigm establishes what is correct and what is not. A change in paradigm all of a sudden makes things that were unthinkable of yesterday or even incorrect yesterday, they make them correct. A paradigm shift appears in response to an accumulation of anomalies and the proposal of a new theory with the power to explain them. That is some Kuhn, an epistemologist, a scientist which is famous for whoever busies oneself with epistemology, with the science of knowledge, of how you know things. Paradigm is also used in the broader sense of worldview, that is to say, the set of beliefs and values that affect an individual's perception of what reality is. Principles, basic principles that are usually very different from one time to another in the same place and from one place to another at the same time. What is property? What is a contract? What is tort? It is completely different in an Arabic country than it is in the US. And still, we do go along to different, correct principles in different realities. For the San Antonio Bulls, a paradigm shift means a change in how a given society goes about understanding and shaping reality. You shaped it. You shaped reality. You are the heroes of this, thing, which is free meals in schools. And again, you should treasure that against any message that, you know, good sense, common sense society is now trying to give you. And you took up your side at some point. Today, there are two incompatible notions, and they are on a violent collision course. On the one hand, the right of all individuals or corporations to place their own gains above all else in the name of their full and absolute ownership of the property they have inherited or purchased. On the other hand, the need that private wishes must be tempered and limited by concern for the public interest. The common good is dying out. This is something that, you know, we repeat to ourselves, but it is true. It is true. The notion of the environment as a raw resource that can be plundered for one's own advantage. The idea that schools should not educate citizens to think, but should impart knowledge aimed at making them productive. You know, I have these colleagues, jolly ones, that tell me, oh, when we leave in July, have a productive summer. Well, I don't want to have a productive summer. I want to have a holiday. I don't have something else. The tendency for health to become a profitable business rather than a service owed to people. The dismantling of the public sector in favor of lucrative privatization. It is the primacy of private profit over the general interest. You are cultivating the future, you see. You are long-term actors in this play. You are part of this dramatic clash. On the one side, the short-sighted outlook of those who believe it legitimate to use and abuse the world in any way they see fit. On the other, the far-sighted viewpoint of those who are aware that they have received a legacy which they must pass on and indeed enhance. Against the bull of speculation, we need a bull of regulation. We need the law, you see. We need soft law, we need hard law. We need to know the terms of our civil interaction. This is extremely important. Perhaps you know this notion, which has been, of course, now let me do this. Earth Overshoot Day. What is Earth Overshoot Day? This year will be on July 24th. July 24th will mark this year's Earth Overshoot Day, the day that humanity's demand for ecological resources exceeds the resources Earth can regenerate within that year. Over the decades, the ecological and carbon footprint of humans has gradually increased, all while Earth's biocapacity, i.e. its ability to regenerate, has diminished significantly. That has led to Earth Overshoot Day arriving earlier and earlier, moving from as late as December 30th in 1970 to July 24th this year. In less than 7 months, we'll have used everything Earth can regenerate this year. For the rest of 2025, we'll deplete our children's future. Here is a geographical distribution of who depletes what. You have, first of all, Qatar, which makes it already in early February. You have all the West there, you know. Now you have China in May this year. And China, you know, China is 1,400,000,000 people. So their, you know, intervention as people who can buy, consume, and waste is really dramatic, you see. America is something very early, and it is kind of patchy, because some areas are a little more looking to the future, and some others, which curiously we think are great things in the world, like the Silicon Valley, is like Qatar. Makes it to early February. So whenever we talk about being well off, we should see the two sides. This is, you know, how per capita, per head consumption in the world went from 1961 to 2021. And you can see how all the consumption, which is also indicative of being better off, has, you know, increased from 20 kilograms to almost 50. This is the United States, necessarily much bigger than the world's. And again, now China in the last 10 years has made it to US, you know, consumption, and China is almost 4 times the United States as to people. And this is making the situation impossible. We will see together what happens in the Amazons, because with the Americans now and the Europeans, now we have the Chinese who consume, you know, at that pace. This is the scale of global food waste. And, you know, it does make sense that you are concerned about what your kids consume properly and what is left on their dishes. It starts from there. It starts from being aware at 6, at 7 years of age that there is a problem of waste. It's enormous, the scale of global food waste. And again, of course, the United States, but look at China. China is almost 5 times at the moment as a producer of waste. So you see, and I teach regularly in China every year. I deliver a course on food and justice. And whenever I tell my Chinese colleagues and students, well, look at you, they reply, well, look at you in the last 50 years. Why is it that all of a sudden we have a problem because we are now wasting as you have done? Viewpoints, you see. One of the elements of narrative that big corporations have been telling us is that food must move to feed a hungry world. But is that so? Whenever you think that over 50% of the food produced and consumed comes from small farming, you perhaps see that it is not as obvious as it looks. Let's make it China, just to be diplomatic, but it could be Italy, it could be the US, it could be Texas, you know. China means this is the Amazons in Southern America. You see that big, you know, breathing area, one of the very, very few left on the earth. 8 million hectares of soy monoculture, which means 80 million tons of Amazon soy that are sent to China to produce pork. 800 million pigs slaughtered yearly. China does export some of this, but by now the domestic market is more important than export, okay? Which wasn't the case 15 years ago. And to do this, we jump from one place to the other. We produce soy in Brazil, we send it all the way to China, and China sends part of its pork chops to Europe and even to the US. Okay, it is about jumping. Financial powers jump to follow soy and pigs. In 2008, Goldman Sachs diverted assets from derivatives to food chains, buying, you remember the big fall, buying 25% of Shankui, which in 2013 buys Smithfield Foods, the world's largest pig and pork producer. So all of a sudden, people were hungry in West Africa because their food had rocketed in price, and there was no natural event that caused that. It was just financial speculation. Tina, there is no alternative. You remember at the beginning of the 80s, Lady Margaret Thatcher invented this slogan. Food must move to feed a hungry world. But also, there is only one way to deal with things. Multinational corporations, whether they are European or Chinese, by now the Chinese are learning it the hard way. Okay? Multinational corporations have stripped poor countries of their natural resources and left environmental devastation. I've published recently an article on COFCO, which is this big state multinational corporation, Chinese corporation, and the way they are dealing with the Amazons and South America after having, ideologically described how other multinational corporations had behaved for decades in South America. And there is no difference, trust me. Banks have burdened poor countries, and now rich countries, with unsustainable debt. No other belief is allowed, and any other belief is understood as unrealistic. One of the problems, I direct a college which busies itself with law, economics, and finance, and international law. One of the problems is that the rules, not only soft rules, but everything that makes an international contract, correct, valid, okay, in our idea, these rules reward corporations and big actors, as opposed, for instance, to small farmers, small fishers. Structural adjustment and trade agreements have opened markets of the global south to unfair competition from artificially cheap food products from abroad. While OECD countries and China have increased subsidies to agriculture in real terms and protected their markets. This is a problem we have as Westerners, and middle class or upper class Westerners, that we think that our way of conceiving the world and dealing with it is the right one. I remember I was in Mali at some point. Mali is somewhere in Western Africa. It's a big, big country. And there was this plan conceived by two acquaintances of mine who worked at the World Bank, of having rationally managed a train link from Bamako, which is the capital of Mali, to Dakar, which is in Senegal, another West African country on the coast. It took usually 3 to 4 days to make that piece of travel. 3 to 4 days, because then the train would stop at every single borough, village, market. There was a whole world of trade exchange, but also of an exchange that went beyond trade, which was interaction between different ethnicities. And in our Western viewpoint, this was irrational. So we had to make it less than 24 hours. One wonders why, because there are flights. There are flights from Bamako to Dakar if you want to take it. It takes some 3 hours. So why do you want to make it by train? And so our plan, which was a structural adjustment on condition of behaving rationally, they would give them funds, okay, that had to be returned at some point. On that condition, then the whole thing, has destroyed entire economies. Also, because what we think is rational is to have a private management of the land, while culturally in West Africa, land is shared and it is managed communally. So this is the problem that we have as the West, that I have. I'm from Sicily, which is the cradle of civilization. You are newer people to me. I don't even understand you. You can't be, less than 3,000 years of age. So this peculiar viewpoint we have has been then even more restricted from the 80s on. I remember I studied economics in the late 70s. It was a post-Keynesian, whatever that is, viewpoint on economics. By the mid-80s, this was not possible any longer. There was one viewpoint, which was the Chicago School von Hayek. And this is the ethos of Homo economicus, the economic man. I'm sorry for the gender bias. The Wall Street Taurus economicus, the bull of the economic speculation. Economic activity is separate from moral values, they tell us. Individuals naturally and rationally seek to maximize profit. This jungle attitude and maximizing behavior eventually increases the welfare of the community. So, first of all, if anyone of you has studied the history of economic thought, you will see that never, ever economic thinkers think that the two things are separate. If you take Adam Smith, this guy who started it all, well, it was the physiocrats, but he came very early in the late 1700s. The guy did write The Wealth of the Nations, but he also wrote The Theory of Moral Sentiments, as famous as The Wealth of the Nations. So from the very beginning, economists think that there must be a moral justification for the way you act. You see, who behaves rationally? Monsters do. I mean, real people don't. Real people, you see, have one thing which is the basis of civilization, which is altruism. And altruism, is an economic factor. All big powers in the world have made a point of helping. All the big powers in the world. There is no big power that has not helped, okay? Even our friend Bill Gates, who's not a state as yet, has made it to philanthropic, work. Real behavior is not rational. Rational is, now we are going to have a buffet together, and I am, trust me, quicker than you are. So what I'll do is I'll, jump to the table and I'll take it all. Why? Do I need it? That is not the point. The point is that it is rational. I'll maximize my profit, taking it all. Okay, taking it all. But this is not the way our friend Pepe behaves. He was brought up to being a polite man. So it's 8 in the morning. I am, running, I'm late. I have a meeting, and I am, which happens to me very often, the least important person at the table. And then Kate, who's not from Turin, comes to me and says, where is the train station? You see, the rational behavior would be to ignore Kate. I'll never meet her. It is not likely at all. So why should I, waste 5 seconds of my time? But I will anyway tell her, look, straight ahead, and then you ask if I'm rational enough. Otherwise, I'll even stop and have some detailed instructions for our friend Kate, who's not from Turin. You see, this is the real behavior. And it is an economic behavior. Because you see, many of the big transactions are anyway based on a matter of trust. It is inevitable. There is no such a thing as a continuous in time exchange, trade exchange, without trust. No way. And trust is irrational, as we have seen. So is food a private good only? Of course not, if we take the situation in the primary schools in the US. It's much more than that. But markets do regard food as a mere product. But food as just a private good makes hunger still triumph in a world of lavishness. The Urban School Food Alliance knows that food is part of a complex balance between culture, agriculture, environmental health, and human health. And human health is more than just, being physically fit for our kids. In 2008, as I anticipated, the price of all 25 main raw materials increased at the same time. While usually some prices rise and others fall, this increase in unison is unique in history. No particular natural event took place in 2008. No floods that triggered that increase in the price of rice and wheat. The cause was the huge mass of capital fleeing from the subprime mortgage collapse. Financial crisis is an inherent critique of the ethos of economicus. Resounding collapse of the paradigm of profit maximization was brought by that event in 2008. Hunger, mass hunger in some areas of the world, caused just by a financial happening, a completely hetero-directed event. Beyond the failure of economic science, there is the social and moral collapse of an entire model of economy which free meals challenge. Let's have, I know you know these figures, but let's remind ourselves of these figures of financial immorality. All the import-export of goods and services in the world in 2025 amounts or will amount to some $30 trillion. The currency market exceeds a volume of $7.5 trillion a day. This means that more money flows in the financial markets in 5 days than in the real economy in a whole year. it means that over 90%, 98% of capital circulation is not directly linked to production or trade in goods and services. We are not talking just solid things, we are talking immaterial things, intangible things as well. It is just money chasing money to make more money. More figures. The world's gross domestic product, the total wealth produced by mankind in 1 year of agriculture, industry, and services, is going to be this year 115 trillion. There you have the distribution of, by country, of this GDP. US banks, only US banks, and by now, you know, the Chinese, for instance, are bigger, okay, as a financial sector. US banks hold derivatives, the most speculative financial instruments, with a notional value of over $200 trillion. Today, there are no rules on speculating against food prices and in favor of hunger, or against gambling on the failure of entire nations. This must be evidently regulated. This is irrational, you see. Instability is the essence of casino finance, not just a side effect. Speculators buy just to make prices go up and then sell at a higher price. The greater and quicker they increase, the more they will gain. The greater the disaster, the more lucrative the gain. So what is finance? You remember we started saying we have paradigms. We have lenses that make us see the world, understand the world. Without those lenses, we would see everything blurred. We need those lenses. Finance should be the market of money. To buy some apples, you'll go to the market, the meeting place between apple farmers and consumers. And similarly, financial markets should be the meeting place between those who have savings to invest and those, states and companies, that need to raise capital. So finance should be an instrument at the service of the economy. But by now, the sheer size of it doesn't make it that way. Banks should only be the intermediaries between savers and borrowers. In this sense, finance should serve the common interest. I don't know whether I have a slide on that in this presentation, but you see, this was the case until the 60s here in the US. Banks could do some things and couldn't do other things. Some banks, if they did, for instance, speculation, risky, operations, couldn't handle your savings, Then the thing blurred at the end of the 60s. And then, by now we have this problem that big banks collapse with your savings in it. Today, finance is an end in itself. There is no need to have a solid business. No need to produce, for instance, food. Do play with, figures, and you'll get richer much more quickly if you are good enough at it. This essential and moral role of finance as serving the economy and society has been lost. And in today's paradigm, the paradigm of homo economicus, of the rational choice, finance means making money out of money quickly. Hence the hypertrophic growth of financial markets. Wall Street was as big as 15% of the US GDP in the late 1940s. At the end of the 1980s, it was up to 35%. Before the subprime bubble burst in 2006, it exceeded 350%. Which means that a gigantic mass of purely speculative transactions has been constructed, and the expected profits largely exceed the real growth of GDP. Since there are no rules on speculating against food prices and hunger, the food market, naturally subject to price fluctuations, becomes an ideal hunting ground. Financial speculation has disastrous effects on the worldwide production of agro-goods. A rational and fair production of food is a general concern to be protected by international law against private transnational interests. By now, some of these groups are bigger than states, but we are not talking Togo, we are talking Canada, okay? Some of these private actors are bigger and heavier in international decisions as well than Canada. You know, a big state. So why are we here? Why do we need to be bulls ourselves? What you are doing, I think, goes well beyond the even large horizon of US schools. Roughly half of the world's population experiences severe water scarcity for at least part of the year. And 2.8 billion people cannot afford a healthy diet. So starting for the US kids, the message you are giving to the world, and effectively so, because it came to me on the other side of the ocean, is that, you know, we cannot have a situation where one kid has 2 proper meals and another has none. This is the message you are giving. My small university within the University of Turin has a first concern, which is the commons. The commons are, you know, an area of property that is between the public and the private notion. Commons are spaces, either public or private, that are managed communally. The US is the biggest example of this. If you have a look at how big is the percentage of land, in some states is even over 50% in the US, communally, not even publicly, communally managed, you will see, you know, this is so strange for people in Europe, because we used to have that, but that was 600 years ago. Then we had the enclosures, which were a rational, you know, move to make private some common lands so that we could accumulate capital, okay? But in the US, but, you know, I mean, the heart of the US, you take not just Nevada, you take California, for instance, the percentage of land which is communally owned by local authorities, by the federal government, is enormous. Is impossible to understand for someone like me, Italian, where less than 2% of land is publicly or communally owned. Okay? Great migrations of capital, goods, and people challenge the distinction between national and international issues. We've seen it with the Amazons. That is a problem that we have to deal with communally, okay, as an international community, but also big water reserves, we will see. Issues like labor exploitation, inequality, food scarcity, and climate change enlarge beyond state borders your duties, my duties, making you an Earth alliance, not just US kids. Global commons should be enjoyed in an inclusive and non-rival way, while their situation is critical for depletion and for lack of legal safeguards. And this is a problem that we have internationally. We need to have international agencies, institutions, and rules that protect once and for all our future generations. We are already talking our children, not even our grandchildren. You know, the rate of growth in whatever you can think of, pollution, you know, deforestation is so quick that in 20 to 30 years, we will not have the problem any longer. So this must be an alliance of awareness, an alliance of responsibility. It is already. It must, you know, enlarge this awareness, expand on it. I always, whenever I have a thesis by a student of mine, and then there is, you know, something which is too concise, I put this beautiful expand on it, which is kind of, now it's your problem, not mine. Global exploitation led by unregulated speculation is no longer sustainable. There is no such a thing as a self-regulatory market. Markets are defined by law. Laws are informed by values. Incentives and regulation should be ethically informed. The unethical short term of speculation is not sustainable. And so, against and contrary, opposite to the ethos of Homo economicus, we have the ethos of the commons, the earth as a common space, common not only among, you know, between us of this generation, but also among our generation and the generations to come. The commons are spaces, services, and goods functional to the protection both of basic individual rights and vital public interests. They are crucial for the free development of the individual as a human being, which means, you see again, that once you have a kid, 7, 8 of age, that shares food as a big moment in his or her day with other children, irrespective of price, this is a moment where food is taken as a commons and which is crucial for his or her free development as a human being, even more than a citizen, you know, a human being, even more than a national, a human being. Some commons go beyond the local perspective to reach a global dimension. Look at what you have at the border with Canada. That is the largest water reserve, drinkable even water reserve that we have on Earth. Natural commons, such as great water reserves, a clean environment, climate stability, biodiversity, and the ozone shield. Human-made commons like transnational infrastructures, the internet, for instance. Global policy objectives like peace, security, sustainability, monetary and financial stability. All these are global commons that should be handled together with a common objective. In Southern America, perhaps you know this, they have the concept of Pachamama, the Mother Earth. Global commons are essential for a fair and regenerative world. They satisfy the need of the present generation without foreclosing options for the future ones. Yet, they are underprovided due to the lack of national and international regulation. on the other hand, you know, the law has tried to stay at the same pace with these obvious principles. Now the notion of commons has made its way into the new constitution of Ecuador in protecting nature and its rights. The right to food is expressly protected in the Bolivian constitution, while water is defined as a basic human right in the constitutions of Bolivia and Uruguay. The United Nations, during the second Obama administration, made it clear that water is a basic right. You remember perhaps the Detroit problem in 2014. And, you know, so in the US as well, there is this perception. I'm not here to teach you that Los Angeles was one of the very first big areas that made water and energy as well a public concern, and still manages water with a public entity. Agroecology is a global common. Universal access to healthy food concerns global issues. When you talk about nutritious food in US schools, you are talking also about a global issue. The right to food and the shared knowledge about its regenerative production are commons that go beyond the state and beyond the states. So where is the place? Where is the place of the future? Here, you know, here is the place of the future. If you stick to the role, the heroic role you've had in these last couple of decades. Local diets can be a basis for a regenerative policy on agriculture and food. Local diets protect local products and labor. They promote the knowledge of the local environment and the culture of the territory and provide the basis for their collective protection. I know that you have successful programs to address with your needs local producers, association of farmers. Food is heritage. You see, what we are giving to our children is not just food. It is a whole culture. The notion of intangible cultural heritage gives international law perspective to the nexus between food and traditional knowledge. Article 2.1 of the 2003 UNESCO Convention defines intangible cultural heritage as the practices, representations, expressions, knowledge, skills that communities and, in some cases, individuals recognize as part of their cultural heritage. I come from Italy, but I'm sure that in Texas is exactly the same. You know, gastronomic rows are the ingredient of my life. I started with my mother. When is it that you put salt to make pasta? Before water boils or after? You know, and there you have ideological positions. But also, you know, one of the things that I always remember is what qualifies Italians as Italians is coffee. You see, we have linguistic minorities in Italy. We have people who speak German and people who speak French. But everybody makes coffee, which is not produced in Italy. Huh? Coffee is from somewhere else. Everybody makes coffee the Italian way, okay? If you are in Ventimiglia, which is at the border with France on the coast, and you have a walk to the French border, which is some miles away, at Grimaldi, which is this very little thing, must be 30 inhabitants, you'll get proper coffee from my Italian-centered perspective. Then you make it some 100 meters to Menton, and you'll have French coffee, which is really impossible. So this, you see, is the idea of cultural heritage, things that unify, things that makes identity, things that will, remind you of where you belong. I'm a deep-rooted person. I left Sicily many years ago. I then made it to England, Africa. Now I'm in northern Italy, which is something completely different from Africa, from where I come in the first place, Sicily. But you see, I mean, in all these travels, something that qualified me was about food, and also the way some things for me are not negotiable, let's say. Even if I'm in London, pasta must be made some way, not another, okay? So, of course, I'm in awe with French cuisine, but then whenever they make pasta, I understand why, at the end of the day, I can be at the same level, because they have no idea. Food is global knowledge. Food produces various utilities, both as a cultural good and as a material good, generated by agricultural techniques. A shared knowledge about food production and preparation that guarantees the ecological cycle of life is a global commons. And this is something you see that we should preserve for our future generations. The way you make food, I mean real food, which is not just to open a packet of something and then have it, but it is to have fresh ingredients, to recognize them, first of all. My age allows me to understand which fish I'm taking, okay? My daughter has no idea of it. My daughter has no idea what, we have different definitions for the same thing, which is a brass in English, but I'm sure that you have local terms. And, I can go to the fishmonger and say, look, I want that one, a spigola. And, we are also various enough to have different words in different regions of Italy to call the same fish. And it is a different perception, because you know that Italians don't have neuter cases. We make it either feminine or masculine. So this will be, masculine for me. It could be even feminine, because table is let's say, a complex thing even in Latin. But you see, I mean, in my idea, objects are gendered, okay? And fish is. A brass is feminine because I'm from the south of Italy, while from someone in Turin is absurdly masculine, So knowledge is extremely important, and this is another thing that I know in some of your schools you are doing. You are making the kids see the ingredients, making them understand how the meal is composed. Food is a human right. It is a basic human right, crucial for peace and security. It is not just to the advantage of individuals, of marginal communities and peoples. It is our, crucial problem. It is crucial for peace and security, humanitarian assistance. I was telling you, I mean, big powers have always had a benefit side, a philanthropic side to themselves. Altruism is inevitable if you want to rule the world. Innovative sources of financing for development, monetary and financial stability. Beyond us, beyond US schools, the earth. Global issues like poverty, inequality, humanitarian crisis, and climate change enlarge beyond national and continental borders the legal, political, and moral responsibilities of nations, of their governments, and make these issues transnational. The Earth needs you, Alliance, to point out these problems. It needs to have your awareness of how important is and how courageous is the thing you are doing. A couple of months ago, with a Chinese colleague who completely destroyed my first text, we published this perfectly irrelevant article, and I have no idea how this was translated into Chinese, but anyway. Gloral, which links global to moral. An ethical paradigm shift on a global scale needs our acting in a global way, global as moral. Our connecting globalization with morality, equity, and the possibility of a future of peace, which seems to be improbable at this very moment. Global cooperation, sustainable practices, and the rights of marginalized food producers are essential to guarantee food justice and a more equitable, which means just and ethical, global food system. A global world will make room not only for new ethical dimensions of food production, trade, and consumption, but also for a new common future of peace and geopolitical stability. A thick ideological apparatus today proclaims its faith in technological innovation as a condition sufficient for survival. I told you, multinational corporations tell us, look, why should I allow a global farmer to waste that little lot? I can make it much more food from that. What we are told is that technology will make it for us anyway. But you see, we see together the side problems that technology, that this way of extracting resources without caring for the future is causing at the moment. Technological innovation may be necessary, but it is certainly not sufficient, and again must be regulated, must be thought over. There is no long-term future outside of a radical, ethical paradigm shift. A future can be gained only harvesting all cultural inputs available out there. Thank you.
The work we do is funded through generous donations from people like you. In order to continue this work, we need your support. Please visit www.urbanschoolfoodalliance.org to learn more and donate now.